I thought I wanted to help people like me, either young men that were too skinny, gain muscle, or young men that were overweight, lose fat, and feel good about themselves. And so I start advertising this challenge online, just in the way I'm speaking to you, just the way that I naturally talk. And on day one of the challenge, I open up my laptop, I open up Zoom, and I start getting ready to educate and coach everyone that signed up for the program. And when I open up, there's nobody on the Zoom call that looks like me. There's a whole lot more people that look like you and my mom and all my mom's friends. And I was like, what? How did this happen? And so I came to the conclusion that growing up with a strong female role model, I just resonate and communicate well with that demographic.
Have you been feeling off? You know what? Your hormones might be out of whack. Take my quiz to discover your personalized hormone imbalance and get a free report with your results. Learn what's really going on with your hormones and start feeling like yourself again. Just visit the website quiz.hormoneshelp.com to take the hormone quiz now. So I'm talking to Joe Hoye today. He's the owner of Hoye Fit. As soon as you hear him, you're going to understand that Joe is a man, and he is a young man, but he's dedicated his career to helping women in the perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause transition really regain control over their midsection, learn how to have control over their bodies, and regain that lifestyle that they can enjoy. And Joe and I actually connected because several of his clients were actually listening to my podcast. And so I really wanted to understand his background and how he sort of landed in the women's health and particularly perimenopause and menopause transition. So let's get into the fitness you should be doing in this time period so you can live the lifestyle you want and have the body you deserve. Kind of like the 20s and 30s, you know, those days before. All right, so Joe, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question because, of course, my women listening are like, why is Betty talking to this very young, fit man about women's health and particularly perimenopause and menopause weight gain and body composition? So we're going to go ahead and get the elephant out of the room and let's talk about it.
What does this guy know about women in midlife? Oh my God. I've been asked that a couple of times. So I get it. The thing is, I'm never going to understand what it's like. I'll never experience it. I'll never feel it. I'll never live it. But it doesn't mean I can't have an education, right? And so, number one, I do have an education on it. Number two, I have this massive desire to help with it. And so I have a 3-part story as to why it is I chose this or this actually chose me. And so number one, growing up, I grew up with a really strong female role model in my life. That was my mom. She was really the only consistent role model in my life. And when I was 13 years old, it was just her and I in the house. I was kind of headed down the wrong path at that age, and she could definitely tell. And so one day after school, I finished my homework. I finished doing whatever 13-year-old boys do. And it was about 7:00 at night. I was like, Mom, I'm bored. I don't know what to do. What should I do? Do you have any ideas? She's like, well, you have 2 choices. I'm going to go to the gym. You can come with me. Or if you don't want to come with me, you can stay home and make your own fun. And she was playing that mom that didn't really care, but she definitely did. And so she coerced me into the gym using some good reverse psychology. And I get there, and as soon as she opened the doors for me, it's like the gates of heaven opened. Actually, those fireworks worked well. I don't know why that happened. But anyways, the light was shining through, the angels were singing, all sorts of good things were happening. And I really just fell in love with the gym. And from that day on, I had gone consistently just about every day until the end of high school. But for some reason, I couldn't get bigger. I was always a really skinny kid. So I'm about 5'11" right now. I was about that height since I was 13. Really small, unathletic, slow, not coordinated. And as a boy with 2 older stepbrothers and a whole lot of athletic friends, I got picked on a lot. And it drove me crazy. I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to gain muscle. I wanted to be more athletic, and I couldn't figure it out. And so there came a desire to get in shape, and I couldn't do it. And the reason I fell in love with the gym was because of my mom. So after that, I graduate high school. I start going to college to pursue a career in surgery. And during that time in college, I discovered this thing called alcohol. And that definitely helped me gain weight. And I actually gained way too much weight. So I went from 135 pounds at 18, and I wanted to be about 185, 190 based on pictures I saw in magazines. And I reached that point, And then I blew way past it. I ballooned up to about 220 pounds. Then I had a new problem. I was still not where I wanted to be. Instead of being too skinny, I was too fat. I didn't like my body. I was still too slow, still unathletic, didn't feel good about myself. And I still wanted so badly to get into amazing shape. And eventually I did, because I was pursuing a career in surgery, like I said. So I had to take nutrition courses, anatomy courses, physiology, kinesiology, and understand how the body worked and how the body responded to multiple things. And because of that, I applied it to myself, got in amazing shape. And growing up in a small town, people really started to ask, like, Joe, you went from really skinny, overweight, and now you look great. You tell us you feel great. You're good at sports. It looks like you've got it all. Can you help me with this? I was like, yeah, gladly I will help with it. And so I started helping a few friends here and there in the gym until too many people asked me to be able to help them. And so then something clicked. It's like, well, maybe I can make a few bucks and I can help people. So I decided to start running these online challenges for weight loss. And transparently, I thought I wanted to help people like me, either young men that were too skinny, gain muscle, or young men that were overweight, lose fat, and feel good about themselves. And so I start advertising this challenge online, just in the way I'm speaking to you, just the way that I naturally talk. And on day one of the challenge, I open up my laptop, I open up Zoom, and I start getting ready to educate and coach everyone that signed up for the program. And when I open up, there's nobody on the Zoom call that looks like me. There's a whole lot more people that look like you and my mom and all my mom's friends. And I was like, wait a minute, what? How did this happen? And so I came to the conclusion that growing up with a strong female role model, I just resonate and communicate well with that demographic. And so I didn't advertise to them. I didn't market to them, but naturally I attracted them. And so I was nervous in the beginning. I was like, I've never coached this kind of person before. I don't know if I can help. But by the end of that first call, I was laughing and smiling. All the clients were laughing and smiling. By the end of that first 6-week challenge, every single lady in the program had amazing results. And so that was 6 years ago, and I've just continued to roll with it. But then the last part is, like I said, I was pursuing a career in surgery. And so I eventually graduate. As I'm running these online fitness challenges, I'm working in surgery. And just to clear the air before anybody goes ahead and Googles me, I'm not a doctor. I was never a doctor. I'll never be a doctor. I was helping the doctor with surgery. That was my job. And so inside the hospital I worked at, it was myself and 6 other ladies that had that job position. Like I said, myself, 1 man, 6 ladies. They thought it was a great idea to take the 1 man and stick him in the OB and GYN based rooms. I don't know why. Could be the same thing. I resonate with this population. But there I am again with this population, with doctors that spend, 10, 15, 30 years practicing just this one thing. And I'm learning from them 40 hours a week, plus on-call emergency surgery for the next 4 years. And so that's kind of where my story all comes together. Number 1, my mom got me into the gym, and I can't thank her enough. Number 2, I resonate and communicate well with these ladies. Number 3, I understand them, their body, and what they're going through so well that I can help in a really big way.
Yeah, I think a lot of women will resonate with your story because, especially women in our age group, women's athletics, to see female basketball teams actually have larger fan bases and bigger events than male. That's a new thing, right? When I was in school, we didn't even have as many sports as the guys did. So you had either women who were very, very athletic, which was a very small subset of women, or we really weren't, right? We might have been a little bit here and there, but by the time you went to college, that all went to hell in a handbag. And then often we get into fitness because we want to change something. It's not because it's the joy of fitness or how I feel. It's because I don't like the size of my ass, or, whatever it might be, or the abdominal fat and things like that. So, I think your story of having experienced, hey, I want to change something about myself also resonates, right? Because I know that when I'm talking to our clients and women in our clinic and across the United States, they often get frustrated if they're talking to a trainer who's never been there, right? They were always the athlete. They were always the athlete, but of course I've been fit. Well, you just need to do more of this or less of this because they've never been challenged by that. So I think even though, even though you're a guy, you understand what it's like to go, okay, I feel kind of foreign in my own body. And I think that's probably why. So if you're ever kind of like, I understand feeling foreign in your own body.
You know what? That's something that I've never thought of and that has never been presented to me in 6 years, but it makes good sense.
Yeah, because most women, particularly, I'm 54 going on 55, and I feel better today than I did at 35. But my 40s weren't fun, right? I went back for my PhD because my 40s weren't fun. I was like, what the hell just happened with my hormones? And I was in kind of early menopause transition that went on for a decade and a little change. But I think that's the other thing is women, if they felt good about their bodies, it was like a decade or two ago. And so now it's like, oh my gosh, now what do I do? And so often we get on a diet train, right? All of a sudden we're going to be like, okay, I'm going to start this diet. I'm going to paleo. I'm going to carnivore. I'm going to keto. No, I'm going to go low fat. No, I'm going to be vegan today. No, I'm going to be paleo tomorrow. And I think you and I probably are a lot on the same page here. Let's talk about why this idea of restricting more and more, working out longer, and just cutting more crap out of your diet basically reverses the outcome. In the long term, it's just going to make things worse rather than better. So let's talk about it from the fitness side. Let's talk about what are women doing, particularly that is counterproductive?
Too much cardio and too much of anything. You know what? Not even too much cardio. Women or people in general trying to lose weight oftentimes are doing too much of anything in exercise. And it's funny that you say this now because in my free community, I've been explaining this a lot. And I like to just keep it very simple and explain that exercise breaks us down. It stresses our body out. If we strength train, it creates these tiny little tears in our muscle that make us worse. And with only exercise, we're going downhill. But the reason exercise becomes good is when you pair it with recovery. And then that's what causes that eustress, that positive stress, to build you back stronger. And so if you're exercising more than you're recovering, you're doing more damage than you are good.
Yeah, it's so true. Because all the women in my age group grew up with the, aerobics. I live in Dallas. So Cooper, the guy who basically birthed the running generation, is here. And it's this idea that I've got to go out and I've got to do cardio. Well, most of us at this age group don't have joints that enjoy cardio like that anymore, especially not running. And it is this sort of hamster on a habit trail, just idea. So let's break it down. So obviously the exercise is stressful, both good and bad, and the recovery is very important. What's the other key factor? So let's touch on the dietary stuff, because I'd like to hear your opinions on this, because I, of course, have mine, and I think we probably match in a lot of ways. Let's talk about what they're doing diet-wise that is just like, okay, we got to break this down and stop it.
So while on the exercise side, I think most people are doing too much, on the diet side, they're not eating enough, which for anyone that understands foundational weight loss, that probably doesn't make sense because you've always been told that you need to eat in a calorie deficit. By eating less food than your body needs, you will lose weight. They're not wrong, but eventually your body will get less good at burning calories and become what I call metabolically adapted. And so while someone should be eating 2,000 calories a day to maintain their body weight, maybe now they've eaten 1,200 calories for so long that their body simply maintains at 1,200 calories. And so that's a big problem because then you're stuck with this tricky option of, well, if I want to lose weight, I have to eat less than 1,200 calories, which, by the way, a toddler eats more of daily. And if you want to maintain, you can only eat 1,200 calories. If you eat more than that, you're going to gain if you do it wrong. So it's a tricky situation.
Yeah, and it is a psychological, play because especially depending on who you watch, particularly online and research. I mean, I'm a PhD, so, I like to look at both. So if I have an opinion I based off of some research, I go look for the opposing opinion. And yes, a lot of the studies, particularly the ones that are case controlled, where they've, sequestered people, they're controlling for food, controlling for exercise, a caloric deficit in a statistically significant population will cause weight loss. But I'm like, those researchers need to come sit and spend a couple days in my clinic and meet the women I meet that I know they're tracking everything. They're doing 1,200 calories. They're doing I pick on these guys all the time. Orange Theory 4 days a week. And then as soon as the scale moves 1 second, it's like, okay, I got to ratchet it down again. I'm going to do an extra Orange Theory. I'm going to take out the French fry that steal off my kid's plate on Friday. And so it's this idea. And I think a lot of times when they hear, hey, we need to reverse diet, because that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like, hey, we need to integrate these calories back in. They're terrified if that scale goes 1 pound up. How do you handle that? Because I know how I handle that, but I'd love to hear, because it's fearful. Because all they want in their heart of hearts is to see it move the other direction.
I have so much empathy for that because people have been told for so long, or not even this, let's rephrase. They tie so much value to the scale that a second it goes up, they become worth less. It's not good. It's a hard thing to fix. But what I like to do is paint a picture. So I'll ask a very simple question. Say, hey, if I told you that within the next 3 to 6 months, you gain 5 pounds, but in the next 12 months for the rest of your life, you lost your 30, 50, 60 pounds and you kept it off forever, would that 5-pound gain temporarily be worth it? And I think that everybody listening is going to shake their head. Yes, Joe, of course it is. And so I like to paint that picture from day one, because I know that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's going to happen. And so then I like to refresh their memory with that picture when they're having that hard time and I need to talk them off the ledge.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand that. And it's all about the composition. I always think back, this is before your day, but Cheryl Reese, who was a competitive volleyball player, modeled for Vogue, Avalon, and a bunch of other companies, standing next to a 120 pounds, 6-foot-tall woman at 161 pounds. And I was like, nobody would have called her overweight, any derogatory term, because she was full of lean muscle mass. So it's more about the composition. And I can tell you from longevity research, particularly in women, actually being very lean and particularly sarcopenic, which is, basically thin fat, right? You look good maybe on camera, but you don't have enough muscle, is a much greater risk for mortality than to have a lot of muscle mass and even have what I like to call junk in the trunk. Right? You might have a little on your butt you don't like. You might have little jiggly bits on your thighs. But from a longevity standpoint, the more of it you have, the more you keep, the better off you are. So getting stronger is the most important part.
Looking at the big picture is everything. And I'm glad you bring that up because we do like to paint that picture. And I'll say, okay, so you're 180 now, you want to get to 140. What happens if we get you to 155? But everything else you want comes true. And they're like, well, what? I was like, well, you tell me what else you want. Do you want to pull on your favorite clothes and have them fit? Yeah. Do you want to feel confident when you go out? Do you want to be focused at work? Do you want to have quality sleep? Do you want to get rid of the symptoms of menopause that you can get rid of? Yeah. I want all that. Okay, so if you got all that, but you were 15 pounds heavier on the scale, would you be upset? Like, well, you said I would look the way I want to look and feel the way I want to feel. Correct. Okay, so does that scale matter? No, everything else does.
Yeah, it's just a unit of measure. Happens to be a gross unit of measure that it's easy to look at. Is very easy to look at, right? So what would you describe? So if you're talking to the women out there that are like, okay, I've been working out, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Paint them a picture of what success would really look like. Because obviously you've already sort of alluded to it. It's not something that's going to happen in 30 days. Right? We might be able to change some, but most of the time, nothing visible is going to happen yet. What does success really look like? Because I think we set ourselves up for failure and then we go on a bender and just fall off the wagon.
What does success look like as far as what it takes to be successful or?
Yeah. Paint a picture. Like, let's say the woman you talked about, maybe 189 and is really wanting to get into her favorite pair of jeans that she kept from 20 years ago, because we do that.
Yeah. So success in my eyes looks like a few very simple things done every day for a long period of time. And so it's going to look like giving your body the calories it actually needs when you go to the gym, being there with intent and focus, not just dilly-dallying and lifting the 5-pound dumbbells, but challenging yourself for that 1 hour a day, 3 days a week, prioritizing your sleep, just like you told your kids to, and then doing that over and over again. And the thing is, when you do it that way, it's not such a chore because like I said, everything that I just mentioned was done in a simple way. And when it's done simply, you don't feel like you're on a diet. You don't feel like you're on this crazy workout program. You still have a quality life. And that's what allows you to do it for a long period of time. And that's what allows you to see that result and keep that result.
Thank you. We are a society that likes 7-second snippets and quick results. And we're like, oh man, you mean I got to do that for 90 days? I'm like, 90 days to start. 90 days to start. But then the goal is to keep it, because whatever gains or and things that you made, that's where the rubber hits the road for sure. So let's dispel some myths. So what's the best exercise for leaning out and what's the worst?
Let's see if you agree with me here. So the best exercise for leaning out, I'm going to say, is the exercise that works the most amount of your body at the same time. And so I'm going to say most compound movements, right? And so when I say compound movement, I say a movement that works 2 joints. So for anyone watching video, I can do a curl and I work my bicep where it attaches to my elbow. Or I can do a pull-up and then I work my bicep where it attaches to my elbow and my shoulder, right? And so we want to think about squats, deadlifts, overhead pressing, bench pressing. It's not just for men. You're not going to get too bulky. You're going to maintain a shape that you love. And so that's what I would say is the best. Agree or disagree?
I would totally agree, because I'm like, to me, those single movement things are what I call vanity moves. Like women are like, I hate my arms. I'm like, look, you're not going to have arms that you're going to want to show off until the body fat comes off, because you have to expose the arm muscles. We're not going to get big arm muscles we can't do that. We'll show what's available there. But yeah, it's always these big movements. Because I know early on in my weight training career, because I was very much into kind of the bodybuilding world, I was built to lift heavy things. I mean, I was. And, it wasn't until I started adding deadlift, squat, bench press, like a strength day. Basically once every 10 days, I went in there, it was hard, heavy, and walk away. My body transformed. It was crazy. And my trainer at the time was like, so you're still doing your cardio too? You must be doing it in the morning. I'm like, dude, I'm doing my cardio walking to the car. I was like, my body just bonded really. At that time, I mean, I was young. I was probably 30 at the time, but I remember just going, wow, I don't have to go burn this off on a treadmill, because I hated that stuff anyway. I don't have to go do all this stuff. My body is going to respond really heavily. And I can tell you, as somebody that does a lot of genetic testing with women, the women, it seems to be, this is just anecdotal, I don't have, I haven't pulled data for this. The women that struggle with body composition almost always have a favorable genetic pattern for the muscle power, right? Fast twitch muscle, explosive strength. They are wired to lift. It's really weird, but I would say the preponderance is that it's very rare for them to come back with a lot of like endurance sort of genetics.
Sure.
And so I'm like, girls, we need to lift heavy crap again and again.
Absolutely. And so the worst exercise for what we're aiming for, I would say, is cardio, like you kind of alluded to, right? And so I want to make something really clear. Cardio is not bad. It's bad for what we're talking about right now. Cardio is great for your heart health, but if you want to lose weight and keep your muscle, it's the worst thing you can do. Because as you do cardio, you're telling your body to eat away at your muscle to fuel you. And so you're going to lose muscle, not gain.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I remember after I injured my back training, like anybody in the world, we end up injuring ourselves. So I take a hiatus from it and I'm like, I think I'll do triathlons, because I was a swimmer. I was a competitive swimmer a little bit and diver when I was in school. And so I get into triathlons and I'm training like 2 a day. I mean, seriously, Joe, it was bad. 2 a day. I'm getting up in the morning, I'm running, and I'm getting home in the evening and I'm riding. And I'm like literally, looking at my caloric burn, even on a bad day, even if they overestimate, it's probably 1,800 calories of burn, just because I'm just unbelievable amount of time. I'm getting fatter, more inflamed. I felt like crap the whole time. And I was like, man, I must be really cardiovascular deconditioned. And I keep going. And I trained for a year. Do I get any better? Hell no. No. It was a bucket list, like check, did it, yeah. Olympic distance, I'm done. I was like, I still cycle, but I cycle very differently today.
Well done. That's impressive. But at the same time, you dug yourself a really deep hole to get out of.
Yeah, it took a lot to get out of that, because the end result was a lot of hormonal imbalance that comes from that just deep overtraining, deep cardiovascular burn.
How much were you eating when you were training that much?
I mean, I was eating probably about 3,500 calories a day. And then I would freak out because my weight wasn't coming off, right? Because I was trying to eat accordingly. And this is before I got into nutrition. I was in a different career at the time. It was what I read about, though. This was like where I spent all my free time. Sure. So I was trying to eat appropriately for it. But The reality is, I think this is true for women. I've spent so much of my career studying the hormone imbalance that really occurs as you enter into perimenopause, because there's a milieu of things going on that sort of make this worse. Is no matter what, even if you're fueling, even if you're trying to control for those things, I think the cortisol effect of that cardiovascular activity and the implications for how your body shifts from fat burning into carbohydrate burning, which isn't happening because they're overtraining. They're training above a zone 2 because it doesn't feel like you're doing enough and it's not hard enough. And if you're working with a trainer, they're telling you're not working hard enough. So what happens is you're fueling, thinking you're going to restore muscle glycogen stores, like you're going to restore your muscles, and all you're doing is chewing your muscle up during the exercise. Stress chemistry is really high, and then what you ate goes to your butt. That is the chemistry of what really happened in a very simplified way. And it happens all the time.
Yeah, especially with people that just, like you said, do massive amounts of cardio.
I think coming off of that, then I think the other trend is people go, oh crap, I can't do that anymore. So then I need to do HIIT 45 minutes to an hour a day, every day. So how do you feel about HIIT? Let's go down that myth. What's good, what's bad about it? Because I think there's nuances to it.
I think there are nuances too. And I think that HIIT itself is a nuance, because you can do, if we're looking at CrossFit in terms of HIIT, you can do a very strength training intensive HIIT workout, or you can do Murph, which is like a mile run, 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 300 air squats, and then another mile run. So like those two are both HIIT, they're just massively different. And then we have things like you like to pick on, and myself as well, Orange Theory, which is just glorified, over-intensified cardio, right? So I don't think that's beneficial. I think if somebody likes it, there could be space for it, because I do want people doing what they enjoy doing. Otherwise, they're not going to stick to it for long. So I'd like to level with someone. Well, if you like Orange Theory, let's go once a week. Let's make sure you're recovered, and let's prioritize strength training and protein intake and calorie intake at the same time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the HIIT has a lot of different definitions. And if you look at the research on HIIT, it really shows that the benefit starts to decline pretty strong after the first 15 minutes. No one's going to pay what they pay to go to these gyms to spend 15 minutes and walk away when you're at max benefit for time allotted. And I don't go to those because I'm the type of person, I'm super competitive with myself. I would totally get into it, and it would be at my detriment. So I just don't show up to those places, and I stick with what I know works. But okay, so I'm glad we kind of agree on this one. So I've got one other one, right? So the other thing that a lot of women do is they are worried about lifting, or let me phrase it this way. Let's talk difference between lifting a lighter weight more frequent, i.e. reps, or lifting a heavier weight at lower reps. Obviously, women lean into the lighter weight, more reps. Let's talk about what you see and what you think people should do.
I like this. I haven't talked about this a lot. So I think there is space for both, and people should train both, because different rep ranges are going to serve different purposes. Two things we do know is that as women enter midlife, their bone density is decreasing and their muscle mass is going away. And so lifting heavy with low reps is certainly going to tell your bones to stay strong. That's going to help you stay functional and safe as you age, so that when you take a fall, you're not breaking anything, you're just getting bruised, hopefully. And then in terms of some higher reps, I don't want to define what higher reps are. Are we talking 8 to 12? Are we talking 15 to 30? I like seeing things in the 8 to 12 rep range, because that's going to increase muscle size, right? As long as someone's eating to match that. But then you're going to get that nice tone that people want, because like you said, if we're wanting to lose underneath our arms, even if you lose underneath your arms with fat and you have no muscle, you're just going to have skinny arms. Whereas if you build this arm up a little bit and then you lose the fat, you're going to have a nice toned, defined arm.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Okay, so one last myth I want to talk about, or not myth, I would say misconception, or things that get misunderstood. Protein intake, right? Mm-hmm. Very important, hands down, super important. However, I think there's a lot of overstating what protein intake can do when you don't have the other components of health dialed in.
Okay.
Right. So how do you feel about, because there's a lot of people going, oh, you just need to eat 120 grams, 150 grams protein a day, and you'll do muscle protein synthesis. So you'll build muscle. There is some perceptions, because I get women who are like, I go to the gym once a week with my trainer, but I'm making sure I get my protein in every day. I'm like, well, what else are you having? I may not have stuff in, but I'm having protein. I'm like, okay, yeah, not helpful. There is this perception that just the act of eating protein will create a muscle protein synthesis. And that's not necessarily what we see.
Okay. So protein's great. And number one, it's going to keep you full. And so if anyone's trying to lose weight, it stands to reason that you might feel a little bit hungry before meal times, even if you're doing things right. So the more protein you have, the less hungry you should feel. So it's going to make your weight loss journey that much easier. Protein is also going to help you either build muscle or keep muscle, depending on how you're eating. Right. And so if you're eating in a calorie deficit, depending on your training age, and when I say that, I mean how long you've been strength training for, you're probably not going to build muscle. But you can keep it when you prioritize protein and strength training while you eat less calories than your body needs. Now, where protein is going to help you build muscle is when you eat a calorie surplus and you have an adequate amount of protein. So 120 grams, like you said, that's a great place to start. That's where we can start to see some muscle gain. And I would also prioritize some carbs as well.
Yeah, because you got to have the insulin, you got to have the carbs to actually push that protein, amino acids into the muscle so you can rebuild those tears. Yeah, it is really interesting because I'm like, whoa, eating 150 grams of protein a day is not going to build muscles on you if you aren't doing the work in the gym along with it. And actually, the research kind of shows the opposite. If you've been overweight for a longer period of time, you have more anabolic resistance. You got abnormal amino acid synthesis. So I'm almost, I'm like, look, we need to get the fitness in here and then raise the protein content because it becomes counterproductive. Because people forget that those proteins break down into amino acids and they can be used to make sugar. That's why we can be carnivore and still survive.
We eat some fiber, but yes.
So we've talked about all these different things and sort of outlines. So you do fitness challenges and fitness things. You've got some stuff coming up. And I think you've helped answer a lot of questions for my listeners about, hey, we got to look at this in a different way. What ways can my listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can find me, just search my name, Joe Hoye, on really any social media. Facebook or Instagram is where I'm most active. That's probably going to be the best. It's just Joe Hoye or Hoye Fit is where you could find me.
Cool. And then you also have, if I remember correctly, you've got a summit coming up. It's a Midlife Makeover Summit coming in July.
Yes. So really excited about that. We have some really big names. It's going to be a 5-day, completely free online event. On day 1, we're talking about nutrition. Day 2 is going to be exercise. Then day 3 is mindset, health, then menopause. We have 4 to 5 speakers every single day. We have NFL players, TV hosts, doctors, motivational speakers, you name it, they're going to be there. And again, it's free. And the reason I'm hosting this is because when I started Hoye Fit, my goal was simple. I just wanted to help as many people as possible. And I realized that alone, I was capped to how many people I could help. And so I hired coaches and we're capped again. We can only help so many people. But now, with the help of people like you, Betty, and then Chris Powell and Meryl Hogue and everyone else at the event, like we're reaching over 2 million people and we're going to affect their lives in a massive way. So that's the goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Joe, I had a lot of fun chatting with you about fitness for women and everything else. It's been actually a lot of fun chatting.
It was. I love it. You're super smart. I'm glad that we align on everything and we're pushing a good message, but thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So everybody make sure to check out the summit. We'll have a link in the podcast notes so you can get to it. And I will see you next week on Menopause Mastery. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Menopause Mastery podcast. You are why I'm here, and I am so very grateful. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any wisdom on creating the most exceptional life on our terms. If this episode has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend to spread the love, and together we rise. You can follow me on social media at Betty Murray, PhD, and you can reach me online at bettymurray.com.